Dear son, you must understand that your home is not here where you have been born, for you are a warrior. You are a bird, and this house where you have just been born is only a nest. Your mission is to give the sun the blood of enemies to drink, and to feed the earth with their bodies.
In the time of Columbus, Europe discovered a strange new world, where every boy was born to fight, and men fought for living flesh. Mortals to be sacrificed, to slake the thirst of a god for blood. On a bright, warm day in the autumn of 1519, Spanish conquistadors rode down into the valley of the shadow of death. They feared no evil because they saw none, only greening pastures and shimmering still waters, and a city afloat, Tenochtitlan, capital of the mighty kingdom of the Aztecs.
These great pyramids and buildings rising from the water, all made of stone, seemed like an enchanted vision. Indeed, some of our soldiers asked whether it was not all a dream.
Riding 8 abreast down a long causeway, a few hundred foreigners entered a city of 200,000, larger than any in Spain. They stopped at the steps of a temple 100 feet high, washed in sunlight and stained with infamy.
The walls of the shrine were so caked with blood, and the floor so bathed in it, that the stench was worse than that of any slaughterhouse in Spain. They beat the drum, and the sound was most dismal, like some music from hell. There were many diabolical objects, and large knives, and many hearts that had been burnt before their idols.
From the Gulf of Mexico to the Pacific Ocean, the Aztecs ruled an empire built on trade, tribute, and terror. But they were awed by the men with white skin and dark beards from a land beyond the sea, who carried sticks that belched fire and who might be gods. Scarcely 200 years before the Spanish arrived, the Aztecs entered the Valley of Mexico and settled at the center of vast Lake Texcoco. By sinking logs into the soft ground and raising platforms over the marshes, they built up their great capital, Tenochtitlan. Lacking natural wealth, the city grew rich on trade. Life revolved around its thriving markets. As the Aztecs multiplied, so did their power. Tenochtitlan, built upon mud, gained a second foundation. Tribute, in goods and flesh, exacted from its weaker neighbors by its powerful army. For a boy, to be born an Aztec was to be born a warrior. When he came into the world, the midwife sprinkled water across his mouth and chest and held him up to the gods. One day, she chanted, he would enter the palace of delights where the brave who die in battle rejoice. The boy's life would be dedicated to Huitzilopochtli, god of the sun and of war. He was the model for every warrior. Each night, the sun god fought furiously with the moon and the stars. At dawn, victorious, he rose again, and crops flourished. But the nightly battle so exhausted him that he craved the precious water, human blood. When the Aztecs dedicated their shrine to the sun god, they wallowed for days in an orgy of sacrifice. Their victims numbered in untold thousands.
War must always continue, so that whenever our god wishes to eat and feast, we may go there as one who goes to a market to buy something to eat, to obtain victims to offer our god, Huitzilopochtli.
For the Aztecs, warfare was their lifeblood. Leaving childhood, a boy entered a house of youth to begin his training. Priests scarred his torso and arms with the marks of the sun god and taught him the ballads glorifying fallen heroes.
The brave warriors and all the youths, each day, each night, should sing and dance, so that all the cities which lay about Mexico should hear.
At 15, the boy learned the tools of his profession, the bow and the sling, the javelin and the shield, but foremost, the club. It was studded with blades of obsidian, razor sharp and harder than steel. Such a weapon could sever a man's head with one blow. The boy learned how to live through battle and how to die nobly. He was not to fear death, but should even welcome it. The slain warrior would be borne away on tinted clouds to live honorably among the gods. He who survived and excelled could expect lavish rewards on earth. At 18, the boy was at last allowed to watch seasoned warriors in combat. With his second venture onto the battlefield came his first test. He and 5 other youths must take a prisoner. If they succeeded, they tore out his heart and offered it, still beating, to the gods. Then they feasted upon his body. The first captor was rewarded with the torso and right thigh. The 6th contented himself with the left forearm. Taking a second prisoner brought the young man new privileges and higher rank. A third gave him command of junior warriors and the right to dance and drink spirits at festivals. A 4th captive made him a fully fledged warrior. A 5th won him distinction in dress. After taking 6 captives, he joined the exalted ranks from whom officers and generals were chosen. However low a warrior's birth, glory in battle opened the way to noble rank and untold wealth. The king of the Aztecs fought beside his soldiers, wearing the most resplendent feathered headdress, but braving the same dangers. His authority rested upon his courage. A warrior's time in the sun could be brief. If fortune failed to shine upon him, no matter his rank, he returned to work as a fisherman, farmer, or sandal maker. But another summer brought another campaign, and one more chance for glory. Insatiable for tribute, the Aztecs warred incessantly with other tribes. Before fielding their army, they sent out their spies.
When they entered land under which they were at war, they became like their enemies, in their garments, their hairdress, their speech. If they were discovered, they were slain.
South of Tenochtitlan, a party of Aztec spies entered a Mixtec city, renowned for its gold, feathers, and precious jewels. Unmasked, the spies were seized and publicly flogged. When he learned of this affront, the Aztec Emperor Moctezuma vowed revenge. From each ward within Tenochtitlan, he requisitioned food, arms, and equipment to provision tens of thousands of warriors. Lacking the wheel and beasts of burden, they were followed by just as many porters. Priests carrying effigies of the gods marched ahead, behind raiding parties and scouts, who relayed messages to the main body with conch shells. Days later, outside the Mixtec city, the two enemies met. The battle followed all the rituals of a performance. Generals in brilliant headdresses gathered to decide where they would fight and when. Receiving the instruction, "Prepare for battle," warriors hurled taunts across the field. When their priests announced the time was right, the chants and whistles and war cries were amplified by conch shells and drums into a riotous din. Now came the attack. Volleys of stones were flung from slings. Spears and darts showered both sides. Then, breaking ranks, the soldiers flew at each other. Amid the chaos of battle, men vied to show off their skill. The Aztec warrior fought as a solitary hunter, competing with his own kind for prey. No warriors stood out more than the elite of the nobles, dressed in splendid costumes and terrifying headdresses, the Knights of the Eagle and the Jaguar. Adopting their bird's unwavering stare, Eagle Knights, bedecked with feathers, screamed as they swooped down on their foe. With the stealth of a cat, the jaguars silently stalked their prey, then erupted in a frenzy as they pounced. The fury of the onslaught broke the Mixtec's ranks. The survivors fled into their city. As the Aztecs fought their way through the streets, their captains urged them on to the Great Pyramid in the center. Baying and howling, they charged up the steps. At the top, jubilant warriors set the thatched roof of the temple ablaze. It was the signal for victory and pillage. Amid the ruins, Moctezuma dictated harsh terms. The Mixtec king was strangled, his family enslaved. A back-breaking tribute was exacted. 2,000 finely woven blankets, 8,000 bunches of quetzal feathers, 40 bags of cochineal dye, 20 bowls of gold dust, strings of beads, bales of cotton, and sacks of chilies and salt. Behind the victors on their march home, a single file of captives dragged their feet through the dust, knowing their fate. On the next feast day honoring the sun god, prisoner after prisoner was led up the steps of the temple and stretched across a stone. Thrusting his flint knife under the victim's ribs, the priest reached in and tore out the heart. The proud captor was then handed a bowl of blood from his victim's chest. Dipping his fingers in it, he daubed it across the mouth of each stone idol in the temple. Once more, the sun god could do battle with the night, its thirst for the precious water quenched, until the next dawn. The world of the Aztecs was ruled by a pantheon of gods. But from that pantheon, one god had long been missing: Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent. Legend said he would return one day, a white man with a dark beard, coming from across the water. In 1519, he did. When Hernán Cortés entered the kingdom of the Aztecs, he was taken for a god. The Spanish themselves saw the dazzling white city of Tenochtitlan as heaven. They rode through immaculate streets, laid out with geometric precision. Fresh water flowed into the city along an aqueduct 6 feet deep. Vegetables flourished in terraced fields. Flower gardens perfumed the air. To the hard men from Spain, here was an Eden of leisure and luxury.
When we beheld that broad causeway running straight and level to the city, we could compare it to nothing but enchanted scenes. Never yet did man see, hear, or dream of anything equal to the spectacle which appeared to our eyes on this day. I thought within myself that this was the garden of the world.
As the Spanish beheld this earthly paradise, they were watched by 10,000 ghosts. Victims of the Aztec priests, their heads severed from their bodies and skewered on poles. Revolted by their hosts, righteous in their cause, Cortés and a few hundred conquistadors set out to conquer the Aztec nation. Reaping the hatred the Aztecs had sown, Cortés found allies among their enemies. He cloaked himself in the mantle of a returning god and the aura of the mounted conquistador, half man, half beast, a creature unknown in the New World. But he placed his trust in his cannons and muskets.
The Spaniards came in battle array. The dust rose in whirlwinds on the road. Their spears glinted in the sun and their flags fluttered like bats. They made a loud clatter as they marched, for their coats of mail and their weapons clashed and rattled.
Taking Moctezuma hostage, the Spanish settled into Tenochtitlan. The Aztecs soon discovered that horses were not demigods, nor were conquistadors. Pursued by an army of thousands, the Spanish fled the way they had come, across the causeway, on a retreat they would call the Noche Triste, the sad night.
I'd taken part in many battles, but up to that time, when I saw the cruel deaths inflicted on our comrades before our very eyes, I'd never felt such fear.
The Aztecs had expelled the false god, but the Spaniards left behind a weapon against which there was no defense. House by house, Tenochtitlan was ravaged by smallpox. 2 years later, Cortés returned. Its army weakened, its leader dead, the great capital of the Aztecs fell, and with it, their empire. This nation of warriors who lusted for blood, conquered by a handful of soldiers who killed for gold.
Broken spears line the roads. We have torn our hair in our grief. The houses are roofless now, and their walls are red with blood. Worms are swarming in the streets and plazas, and the walls are splattered with gore. The water has turned red as if it was dyed, and when we drink it, it has a taste like brine. We have pounded our hands in despair against the adobe walls, for our inheritance, our city, is lost and dead. The shields of our warriors were its defense, but they could not save it.